what do I use? City. The city is go to meeting.
Go to meeting? What about it?
Another format that we use.
Oh, yeah, we usually use that with Scott. Go to meeting.
Fred, are you there?
Yes.
Am I able to, am I co-hosting this meeting?
Yep, you can. Hang on.
Yes, please, all my meetings.
Is everybody going to want to share screens, do you think?
What do you mean?
Any of the participants need to share their screens. I need to just click a button so that they can do that.
I don't think so.
Okay, if so, just ask and I'll make it
Of course,
possible.
thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Chauncey.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Dan. Is that Dan? How are you? How's Nancy, Dan? Can you hear me, Dan?
He's muted.
Dan's
Yeah.
muted. Unmute yourself, Dan.
I'm unmuted.
There you go. I was asking, how's Nancy?
Good, good. I was just saying, we just got back from a week up in New Hampshire.
Figured that's where you were. You have good weather up there?
Yeah, it was pretty warm.
Yeah, here too, in spotty rain.
Until 3 or 4 years ago, we never even had a fan up there.
Wow.
How's
Different
Gina
world.
doing?
Yeah, she's fine, thanks. Very well.
I'm going to try to use a set of earplugs. I don't know if it's going to work. So hold on.
No, don't use earplugs.
Here.
There you go.
Here, these are headsets.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Oh, good. Okay. It works.
Yeah,
Right.
it's amazing.
It didn't work this morning. That's why.
Resting up from yesterday, huh?
Mm.
I think we're, it's 2 o'clock, so I'm going to start the meeting. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our special town board meeting of today, July 24th. We are having a special town board meeting workshop to discuss the proposed ORP rezoning. Would everybody like to join me for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
And one nation under God with liberty and justice.
Justice for all.
Justice for all. Thank you. Warren, would you like to start the preamble with us?
Yeah, I guess what we're here to discuss is that we have prepared a proposed local law for amendment to the Office Research Park schedule of uses with some additional supplementary regulations for that use in response to a petition for rezoning that was filed by Rugi and Stamp. And the applicants have found objection to some of the provisions of the law and want to discuss that with us. So we received those comments in a memo from Dan Schuster dated June 22nd. So maybe it's appropriate for Dan to take the lead in telling us, going over their comments, and I'm going to ask Jim to basically take the lead on responding to it.
Just for the public, we've asked the applicants, the Rugi family, their planner, Dan Schuster, and their attorney, Robert Levine, to join us in this workshop. Thanks, Warren. Dan, do you want to take us through your letter of June 25th to us?
Hello?
Hello?
Take my earplugs off, earphones off, they don't work.
All right, well, you're not talking, Dan is.
As the board is aware, we had submitted a proposed zoning revision, which was then reworked and revised
I'm
by
sorry,
the town.
Dan, can you start again, please?
Yeah. In terms of the process we're going through, we had submitted a proposed zoning amendment as part of the petition to the board.
When did you submit that?
Sometime at the end of 2018.
Okay.
And we've been going back and forth since then. And this past, well, I guess it's almost a year ago, your planner drafted a different version of a zoning amendment aimed at the same intent, which is to allow repair and servicing of automobiles in the ORP zone. Although frankly, one could have made the case that at least it appeared that such a use might have been permitted anyway, but we submitted a proposal for an amendment which would make it clear that that use was permitted.
I'm sorry, Dan, but you did not go to our zoning board to find out if it was permitted.
No, not, there was a finding by, I think, your zoning administrator, or a recommendation by your zoning administrator that it would not, that it was not permitted, and rather than go through the whole ZBA process, we thought this was hopefully the easier way of doing it. And we received the revised version prepared by your planner and have a number of concerns about it, which is I'm glad we have the opportunity to discuss with the board. My memo of June 22nd sort of addressed that proposal. There were a few general observations about the proposal and then some specific language recommendations. This proposal deals only with the special use permit standards that would apply to automotive sales and service. It would not apply to other uses permitted by special permit or by right in the same district, such as maintenance services, bus garages, large equipment rental or sales, light manufacturing, and warehouses. none of these new standards, which are fairly extensive, would apply to them. So it singles out the proposed use in a way which is somewhat outstanding. Secondly, the proposal, again, only for this particular use, motor vehicle service, requires a natural buffer of 200 feet along any road or right of way through the property, which when plotted out actually ends up taking up a third of the entire 134 acres into a buffer which has no other useful purpose. And the way the language reads, since it also refers to the buffer not only along roads and right-of-ways, but along property lines, it would end up applying, should there be any further subdivision within the ORP district, it would apply in those cases, further reducing the usable acreage. There is a requirement that service doors for vehicles must be placed at the rear of the building and not face the parcel frontage. We find that that's an unnecessary and unacceptable burden. Again, it would only apply to auto repairs or servicing, not to any of the other uses permitted in the district. And if in fact the purpose of that requirement is to prevent certain visual effects, we believe the intent is for visual effects outside the district. They can be accomplished, that concern can be addressed through site planning or landscaping, fencing or walls, without a blanket provision on location of service doors. Finally, although I don't think it would have any effect on what we're proposing at all, you have a proposal in there which deals with how to compute parking when there are shared parking areas amongst different uses. It appears that this is really misplaced. This provision, if you wanted to do it, should be in the separate section in the zoning law, which deals with parking, and would apply to other uses in other districts as well. Hold on one second. They're mowing the lawn out here. Sorry about that.
Okay.
In response to the major concerns, we've suggested some rewording of a couple of sections in your proposed law. Section D2D, which is the section which deals with the buffer area. And we've accepted actually most of the language within it. But in particular, we've added what we think is necessary is that among the exceptions to what can take place in the buffer would be the installation of any signage which conforms with the other standards throughout the zoning law. You know, an entry sign, a sign that indicates the name and type of business as is required or regulated elsewhere in the zoning law. And section D2F, which is deals with,
Dan, excuse me? I'm sorry, but if you've said this, I apologize, I didn't hear it. But when we talk about the natural buffer, the language actually changes from 200 feet at the edge of any public road and only 50 feet from any right-of-way or lot line. And if you did mention that, I apologize. If you didn't, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
and finally, the issue of service or doorways, we've revised that section D2F to address what we believe is the intent there, which is the view that maybe come from outside of the district into a service area or similar type use by, rather than just saying no door shall be on the front, indicating that service doors will be screened from beyond the district by the buffer area itself, or landscaping, or fences, or other site planning elements, rather than this blanket provision. And the one specific provision, since it's essential to the way this kind of facility would operate, we've indicated that screening shall not apply to vehicular service doors designed for or intended to be used by customers dropping off vehicles, which is a main part of the function of the kind of facility that's contemplated. Those are the specific comments that we have. We wonder at this point whether or not you have referred the proposed zoning amendment to the planning board as your protocol.
I have referred it to the planning board and the county department of planning.
I'm sorry, you have?
Yes.
We thought that it would be helpful if we were to request the being on the planning board's agenda to help discuss it, answer any questions they may have, maybe.
Well, the planning board, if I may, and I think it's public record, has given us a, their input has been positive, and they've given us, Jim, do you have it? Can you read their comments?
Yeah, I can do that. So at the July 6th planning board meeting, the planning board did discuss this proposal in detail, and the letter that you had submitted, Dan, as well. Planning board is generally fine with the proposal. The rezoning proposal is generally consistent. So I'll read the comments. They said the rezoning proposal is generally consistent with uses in the ORP and supports the rezoning to permit a motor vehicle repair and service establishment use. They found that the rationale for the proposed setback distance, which would be the 200 feet, is justified to protect the character of the area. How realize that it may create some site design issues. As such, the planning board recommended the town board make adjustments they feel may be necessary to address the concerns raised by the petitioner, as long as sufficient protections are kept in place to protect the gateway, which is Route 9G, the gateway character, and views from adjacent residential properties and the scenic road. Route 9G from Old Post Road to the town line is a scenic road.
Is Middle Road a scenic road?
Not sure. Hold on one second.
Well, it's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. We can come back to that.
I don't think it is.
Dan, if I could ask you, when did you get our draft? We published this draft in March. Is that right, Warren? I think we adopted it in March, guys.
We didn't get it, weren't aware that it was that there was a version out there until some other public hearing had been scheduled, which is, I think, towards the end of May, there was an article in the paper that said the public hearing has been scheduled for June 22nd. And then in the process of looking up the hearing notice, I realized that there was a proposed draft out there.
Okay,
I pulled these documents off the town's website after an email from Warren to Dan indicated that they were available. I think it was after a June 8th town board meeting. That was the first time we had seen this language.
Warren, you're muted.
Okay, why is that an important issue for our discussion? Why don't we just dig into the comments and see if we can resolve them? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess I can finish. Then I can finish up the last two comments from the planning board, if you like. The planning board found the rationale for the garage door placement requirement again was justified. However, also realized that it may create site and building design issues. As such, they recommended the town board make adjustments they feel may be necessary to reduce the impact as described by the petitioner, as long as sufficient protections are kept in place, again, to protect the gateway character and adjacent residential properties and the scenic road. And the final comment that they had was just asking the town board if they wanted to consider this use being permitted elsewhere in the town and other zoning districts. Regarding that one, as we know, this has been a very, I guess, strategic rezoning review, and it's been just within the ORP and just this use. That's certainly been what I've been focused on. I don't know if, if we're going to discuss where else it may go. There are a few places it could. But that was the last question they asked, which is not part of obviously what was in Dan's letter.
She's not checking her phone either.
Jim, do you want to take each one of their points? We'll start discussing them one by one.
Yeah, I can do that. So if we refer back to Dan's letter of June 22nd, general number one, the
Dan?
proposed for the special. Sorry. Okay. The proposed standards for the special use permit apply only to motor vehicle and repair service facilities. Yes, that is true. What's been written, which was drafted based off of the the initial framework that you had provided, Dan, our criteria just for this use, just within the ORP. The rationale behind what we did is that uses in the town of Rhinebeck have special use permit criteria with them. This was a use where it was desired that criteria, and these criteria only apply to this proposed use that we're discussing today of motor vehicle and repair service facilities. The rationale behind the special use criteria that was put in here, and again, we're going to discuss some of the specifics, really related to the intensity of the use. I don't think anyone had an issue with it being generally consistent with the ORP and what's in the ORP, but the feeling was that the intensity of the use was going to be pretty substantial, particularly in terms of automobile traffic and vehicle counts in and out. And that was the rationale for a large basis of what we put in for the special use permit criteria. Should I go on?
yes, please. So that's the first point about the singling out the proposed use and a little bit about the buffer.
Right. So I don't think there's anything necessarily to discuss there. But again, just wanted to make sure everyone's aware it was intensity. And I guess the other point to point out is that while this was put together, by the petitioner, this is for the ORP itself. So in theory, anyone who would want to develop this use within the ORP would be able to do so under these criteria. So that's something we keep in mind as we draft this, that this will stick with the ORP in perpetuity, unless it were to get changed. Part two talked about the natural buffer requirement of 200 acres. That was in here basically to protect the character of the area. In the comprehensive plan, it talks about how this general area should be protected and retain that kind of rural feeling that it has right now along the 9G corridor. Although the corridor is currently proposed to undergo some changes if they move forward. These criteria apply to this particular use. So if the motor vehicle and repair service establishment use were to be the only use on the 138 acre stamp property or any of the other parcels within the ORP, it would apply to that parcel. So, if the proposal to do this use were to go somewhere on stamp property and be subdivided off, the 200-foot buffer or any buffer requirement would really only pertain to that subdivided parcel that was used for this use. This doesn't pertain to the entire ORP. It's not an ORP requirement. It's a use requirement, again, based on and rationalized by the intensity of the use and the other potential uses that could be there. The fact that we're on a historic road, it's the gateway to the town. And there are residential uses, a couple of them adjacent to some other parts of the ORP, as well as the potential for some of the other uses that could be put in the ORP that might look at needing a buffer like this, which do include a conservation residential subdivision or a conventional subdivision. Again, we understand those don't exist now. They're not proposed. But when we do this, we look at all potential uses and all potential needs as we move forward. So that was where the 200-foot requirement came. The requirement is both a setback as well as a buffer. So when we discuss one, we really discuss the other. When one changed as well. So I guess that's the first item to open up for discussion. I believe the proposal by Dan was to keep the 200-foot buffer from the edge of any public road, but reduce the 200 feet down to a 50-foot buffer from a right-of-way or lot line.
Also, can I just say, we don't have a master plan for this project. We only know that you would put your service there. So I think we were trying to be judicious. Is that appropriate?
Yes, I mean, as of right now, this use goes in and the proposed building and everything associated with it could go anywhere on the site based on these setbacks and any other setback requirements. Whether it's, Rugies that comes in and do it or someone else were to. If we were to subdivide the lot into several lots, in theory, you could get a number of these same, within the ORP. I'm not saying that would happen, but you could.
Yes. So
again, the justification is just thinking about what may happen.
Which is why we erred on the cautious side, I think. There's no master plan yet.
Right. So the discussion really, I think, comes down to the petitioner's request to change that buffer and also that setback number for, I guess it'd be for the property lines and the right-of-way line. But I think we're all in agreement on the setback from the roads, it seems.
So that would be 200 feet on Middle Road and on 9J.
Correct.
And then maybe consider less on interior future lot line divisions for this use only and existing lot lines.
Correct.
Do you want to go through them one by one, town board, or do you want to wait until the end and discuss everything? Warren, any?
Yeah, why don't you finish up and then we can go over the possible solutions to.
Okay.
Service door on the front of the building, that was done as a design consideration. Again, looking at the desire to protect the rural character and primarily visibility from the roads. Desire was to try and keep the doors on, on the back for that reason. I believe the petitioner is now asking for some flexibility in that to not require those to only be on the back of the building. And so where exactly we would go with that is something to be discussed. Part of this discussion today. And then the last comment relates to shared parking being misplaced. So shared parking that was included in here could certainly go in the parking section. The town code, zoning code right now does have an allowance for the planning board to ask for shared parking to be, but there are no standards in the code for how that shared parking would be developed. Since we were being very strategic in this review and in what was drafted for this, what we put together were shared parking standards that we thought were reasonable for the proposed use, which is going to obviously be very automobile intensive and have a lot of associated parking with it, and how that could potentially with another use that comes in the future, or if this use comes in and say the existing stamp light manufacturing business remains, the potential for some shared parking there so that we don't have to have significantly more parking than we might otherwise need. The rationale for putting it in here is that we thought that this was good for the use that's proposed as well as what is allowed in the ORP. And we did not do a full assessment of how this would impact the rest of the town. If we put this chart in the overall parking standards, it would then apply to the rest of the town. And we didn't undertake that larger assessment. We can certainly move it there, but a good understanding of how this might impact that or any kind of unanticipated consequences that might come along. Again, it's an option the planning board has to require. It's not a requirement, but that was the rationale of putting it in here, that we thought it made sense for this particular use and anything that could come in the future. But that could certainly be moved if desired.
If I may, I'm Robert Levine, attorney for Rugies. Dan, if you might mention the one section D2I, the word products, which I think we don't want it to be interpreted the wrong way. I'll bring it up. We had just noticed that in D2I, it states that there shall be no outdoor storage or display of materials or products. Obviously, we do not intend to store products outside except for the cars. And that obviously is understood because in G, we talk about no inoperative motor
I'm
vehicle.
sorry, Robert, is this in the letter?
No,
It's not in the letter. We just picked it up. I apologize.
So I'm sorry, take me through this again. This is
Okay.
in
So in section 2DI, there states that there shall be no outdoor storage or display of materials or products.
Yep.
Since we were discussing all of this, obviously we're going to have motor vehicles outside, and if somehow we could make certain that that is not interpreted as products, interpreted as motor vehicles.
Okay.
That's all.
So what about just adding the language except for the storage of
Other than
outdoor storage of motor vehicles?
Perfect.
Yeah, it was not intended to.
No, I know it wasn't. I know it wasn't, Jim.
okay, that's not a problem.
So I had one question about the signage issue that you raised. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah.
That
Are you indicating in your suggestions for changes for D2D4 that that you be permitted to install signage in the buffer area? Is that basically what the issue is?
If the signs complied with your other sign regulations as they exist in the zoning law. So
installation,
an entrance sign or
no, installation of signage which conforms to 12537 within the buffer.
right.
Jim, do we prohibit signage in buffer areas, or is it?
I'd have to double check. We didn't look at signs in this, and we didn't have any intention of prohibiting signs in that buffer, obviously.
Yeah, I don't
Sign out
think
of
that's a
the
problem.
street.
We can.
I think it's an issue, but if it is, I can certainly, I think, add some simple language to, whatever we end up with the buffer area to state, this exempt signs to whatever
Yeah.
the requirements
Okay.
are. For sign ordinance. That was never intended as part of this.
Okay, so we can address that.
Signs are fine then, and
I don't think we need 2D4. I think it's duplicative and yeah, we're not going to prohibit a sign, obviously.
but
It's going to have to roll with the standards we already have.
you'll check to see if we prohibit it within buffers.
I'll take a look at that. We'll figure out how to.
And if we would need 2D24.
We would actually need something that exempts it, because this says that it would conform with the existing zoning law. So if the zoning law does have a buffer issue, again, which I'll have to check, we'd have to exempt that somehow in here.
Okay,
We'll look into that. I don't think that was the intent here.
yeah, that's an easy fix. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the main two issues really are the 200-foot buffer and the door placement, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think the point one on the, you handle that the position of the town pretty correctly in terms of why we provided these supplemental regulations for this use. This is a rezoning request. We did not undertake a complete rezoning of the office ORP district, so we didn't intend to address any other uses. To the extent that they're addressed already in the zoning law, they will apply. But that would open up this law into a much more expansive revision of our zoning law, which was not the purpose of this response to the petition. So I don't think we're going to change that. Does everybody agree with it?
I don't think we're going to change what, Warren?
On point one, the general observations,
Yes.
I think Jim's response is pretty accurate, that we weren't intending on
I agree.
addressing all of the uses in this
I
zoning.
agree. Alan, what are your feelings? Chauncey?
Does that apply to both A and B of 1?
It just applies
No,
to.
only A.
Only A?
Yeah.
We didn't suggest any language
Hold
changes.
on, Dan, hold on. I want to poll the board. Josh, I'll come back to you, Chance. Take a minute.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Ed? Thumbs up? Okay. Chance, are you ready yet?
Oh, I'm ready. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. I'm in agreement too. We all agree with Jim.
So the issue that we need to chew into is really the buffer issue. And
Again, I just want to say, I think, not having a master plan from the petitioner and not knowing what we're going to do, you could subdivide it, you could turn around and sell it. We erred on the side of being very cautious with our zoning buffers. Would you, town board, agree with me on that?
Mhm.
yeah, I think the solution might be that we write some language into the law which allows the planning board in its review of the various applications, site-specific applications, to waive certain aspects of the buffer requirements. So that in a particular application, if a 50-foot buffer from an adjoining property line is not appropriate, that they can increase the buffer on a case-by-case basis.
But can we exempt them from that on the roadsides and make that firm and allow planning board discretion for interior lot lines?
Yeah, 200. I think we're going to keep the 200. I think in our internal discussions
On 9G and middle.
on 9G clearly we're not changing that.
The petitioner wasn't questioning that. Is that
Wasn't questioning that.
Not questioning it at all.
okay?
So the issue is to give you some flexibility. So it's just hard for us to predict what would be appropriate in a given case until we see a specific site development plan. But if the planning board has the flexibility of decreasing the buffer requirement, would that give you some comfort level?
Well, but Warren, the planning board in a special use permit would always have the ability to set a buffer regulation or as a condition.
But you'd have to go. Well, that would be a variance. You have to apply for an area variance.
If you, and we have no problem with a 50-foot buffer, the planning board in their deliberations can say, we want 100-foot. What they can't do is go less than what you have stated. So that's why we're suggesting a 50-foot on the perimeter. And if the planning board says 100 feet, then, and that's their condition to the special use permit, so be it. It's sort of the opposite situation where they are not being given the flexibility.
Warren, is that, do you agree with that?
I'm not sure I understand the point.
I think Robert said that if we give a lesser setback, the planning board could require more, but they couldn't go the other way. They couldn't say, if we said 100, they couldn't go to 50, but if we say 50, they could go to 100.
I don't see
Right.
why we can't have a greater, maybe a compromise would be 100 instead of 50, and allow them to discretion to reduce that on a case-by-case basis. We wouldn't be able to do that?
Reduction would require a ZBA. They'd have to go to the ZBA for a reduction in a setback.
But not if you give the planning board the authority, specific authority to do that.
I'll leave that one to you.
If they weren't given the specific authority, then you'd have to go to the ZBA. But if they were given the specific authority in the law, then they have that discretion, the waiver.
But
Yeah, I
they
would
have that
think so.
discretion in any event.
So is it an issue?
So then what's the problem?
No, that can't be right.
I think it's more, if you leave it the way it is, I think it's, the planning board would, I think, find it difficult to say, yeah, we're gonna take what you have in there as a 200-foot standard and reduce it to 50. That's a big jump. I think at least moving in the direction of a smaller buffer will allow.
But not knowing what the master plan is of this, not knowing if it's going to be subdivided or, this is a pretty impactful use.
But remember, we're talking about, it's not applying to within, along the edge of any public road. In other words, it's still.
We're aware of that. We're aware. What do you guys,
Jim, what do you think?
what did you say, Warren?
I was just asking Jim what he thought.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I think I have to punt this to the town board. I mean, it's the town board will make the decision. I mean, the original intent again was to create that buffer, from to other ones. I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what number we're comfortable with. Obviously, the petitioner doesn't like 200; they'd like 50. I'm guessing, is there a number we can?
Let me ask Warren one more time. So you're not necessarily in agreement with what Robert's saying? That if
No.
Okay. So your advice to us is?
I was thinking of maybe reducing, making the buffer instead of 200 feet, 100 feet, and building in some flexibility for the planning board to increase or increase the buffer in the law. I think we have the authority to do that.
Okay.
I would be fine with that, but not to decrease it below 50.
Yeah, right.
So 100 feet plus planning board.
But no event less than 50.
Never.
How does that sound?
What do you think, Alan?
Alan, you're muted.
Alan, you're muted. You want to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down, or? Okay, so what we're saying is let it be at 100. It'll stay at 200 for roads, Middle Road and 9G, but it can go to 100 on existing lot lines or subdivisions, and the planning board could have the authority to go to 50 degrees with a site plan and special use permit. Josh?
50 feet, not degrees.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I think the reality in looking at the maps is that a lot of that edge along the eastern and the northern there's wetlands there. So it might inherently be 100 feet.
Yeah, but it could, but then it wouldn't be 100 feet if there were an interior subdivision.
Understood.
Well, it wouldn't apply just to a subdivision. It would apply to any site plan approval and any application.
So even if it's not subdivided, any
Right.
additional, Chance, you're fine with it?
Yes.
Ed? Oh, you got to do thumbs up or down.
Where is he?
Can't see your hand, Ed.
Yeah, your thumb's not in front of the
Put your
camera.
hand in front of your face.
Okay.
Put your thumb in front of your nose.
So we would, all right, so we would go to 100 feet with the planning board given authority to decrease
Yeah,
it.
Jim would have to work up the language for that, and we'll take a look at it.
I'd like to hear what Scott has to say about that. That work for you, Scott?
I think I would like to understand the planning board's view of all of this as part of understanding that, because it's easy to sit here and say that the planning board can go down to 50 feet if they want to. The question in my mind is, after we showed them a conceptual drawing of this, which I've shared with Josh, I shared with Ed, I would like to have them look me in the eyes and go, you know, I think you're right. I think in this edge, 50 feet is fine. Maybe over here, it needs to remain 100. But I think I would like to understand their position on this before I say it. So again, I think we would like to have a meeting with the planning board or members of the planning board next, or once that your language is completed, so that everybody's talking about the same thing.
So
and
you would
understand their
you're proposing that you would poll the planning board to weigh in on a potential law?
No, I'm suggesting that, as we did over 2 years ago, we met with Michael and Melanie, and I'm not suggesting it would be them, but at that time they were members of the board, and we just walked them through our concept and asked for their view on that concept. And it would be obviously based on the zoning language that we're talking about here today.
Effectively a site, just a workshop session for our site plan review, which we would do in any event.
Yeah, I understand. This makes me a little uncomfortable. Warren, do you want to?
You know, if the planning board is willing to do that, obviously whatever the planning board says to you is not binding.
No, this is
And we don't have any authority to tell the planning board that they can't do it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the planning board has to follow our laws, and we're the legislative body.
Right, but there's intent between 150 that's given to the planning board.
Well, then there's the zoning board of review, zoning board of appeals.
I understand why they want to reach some sort of comfort level, so they know that when they go before the planning board, that it's not going to be an insurmountable task. But
it just seems odd going to the chair and the deputy chair of the planning board, the vice chair, and asking if a proposed law that the town board is making will suit. It just feels odd to me, but I guess it's not our business.
And they may not want to do it either. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Take it into consideration what they say. We might want to write the best law that we can.
I mean, I think if
Sorry, Josh.
I'm just curious, is there a plan in place to review at this moment that they could respond to, or is it more conceptual at this point?
It's conceptual at this point, and Josh, I shared that concept with you.
Yeah. I just didn't know if that was the same thing or not.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I mean, we haven't invested heavily in the site.
Or has only Josh seen it?
No, when we had the meeting, it was this had to be put out in the public, so I just put it in a folder.
Okay.
So the way I think I would see this going is if this these changes move forward, certainly the town board can send those to the planning board for comment again, like we did, if that's how you wanted to do it. But in terms of a planning board review, we do pre-application meetings, which certainly an applicant can do, but you kind of have to come in with a plan or a concept. And then obviously we can do a sketch plan discussion in front of the whole planning board. The pre-apps are just with Michael, Melody, and myself.
I want to say that I just want to concentrate on writing the best law that we can. I feel odd about running it by the planning board and then saying we'll revise it.
We're just asking to show a conceptual site plan to the planning board.
You can do what you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
But we're not running it past the town board is not running it past the planning board. This is something you're going to do. We're not.
Exactly, we understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've given us their comments. Is that do you guys agree with me? Am I being too hard here?
I think it turned out reasonable.
What does that mean?
I think what you just said at the end was fine.
Okay. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. There wants to be some sense of precision here on the applicant's part. Yeah. So I get the desire to get more information.
I don't want the planning board.
And I understand your position on that as well.
Law with us, yeah. Chauncey?
Exactly.
So it's the arms.
They can talk to them, but
it should not influence our. I'm concerned about the arm's distance between the town board and the planning board with legislation. Ed? Yeah.
But it is the planning board that is,
Hold on, Robert. Warren?
Let's focus on our job right now is that we're going to come up with a revision to this law. And then what you do with that is fine. And if you want us to hold up consideration of the law, we'll do that. But we're not participating in any consultation with the planning board on this.
nor would we seek that.
Thanks, Warren. That's well put.
Okay.
So I think where we are now is we're willing to go to 100-foot buffer on all property lines, existing and future, with
Except for 9G.
except for 9G and Middle Road, and giving the planning board discretion to go within no less than 50 feet with a site plan review or special. Okay, point number 3. Is everybody ready to move on with this? Town board?
Yep.
Sure.
Doors, number 3. I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, I think, again, what Jim, well, I don't know. Does somebody else want to lead this, Chauncey?
What do you mean by point 3?
The service doors placed at the rear of the building, the applicant has said that it's unacceptable and burdensome and only.
I'm okay with the doors being in the front. I do have a question though. The very last couple of lines of Dan's section D2F, saying that the screening wouldn't apply to service doors intended for customers dropping off vehicles. I don't get that unless you're going to actually have a customer drive the car into a building. Wouldn't I bring my car to your lot and leave it outside? What was that?
No.
I don't get the doors part.
No. The intent here is to have service drives where you will drive in undercover and get out of your vehicle and speak to your service advisor. This is a very common practice in today's automobile business.
Oh, I just hadn't run into it before.
I mean, the Toyota dealer in Kingston has that.
New one on me. You'll learn something.
Yeah, I've been to dealerships that have that. Yeah.
Good. I like it.
That's not a problem for you, Chauncey?
Well, now that my question's been answered, I wonder why the exclusion and whether it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the ones that I've seen are large service stores. I mean, the same screening should apply to the vehicular service stores designed for use by customers.
I agree. Yeah, why are you asking for the exclusion, Dan?
I think the intent of that provision, at least in part, as you had it drafted in yours, is not to have a garage door opens up into all of the work where all of the lifts are up and everything, and it's a complete work area, as opposed to what's essentially a drop off, which happens to be inside rather than outside.
Again, I'm not connecting the dots.
See, the problem is theoretically you could have 4 service doors and then make them designed so the customers would drive their cars into each one of those and then avoid the buffer requirement.
Right.
I know you wouldn't.
The buffer requirements are 200 feet.
It's got nothing to do with the buffer requirement.
This is, if I understand what you're talking about, this is a drive-through. It's a building that has doors at both ends. The customer drives in one end, drops the car off, and then leaves. And then one of the service people take the car and keep driving straight out the other end. Correct?
That's correct.
So is the concern that you think that there's going to be a requirement that screening go along the building where you would be putting in doors? I mean,
Well, that's all part of it, but part of it here is it says that all doors have to be on the rear. That means on one side.
well, yeah, I think the discussion needs, I think we need to have the discussion about where the doors are located. I think, obviously from a practical standpoint, we're not going to require screening up against the building in front of a garage door. It just obviously wouldn't work. But I think the discussion is where do we want the doors? The doors on the back were a design consideration to try and keep it consistent look of the front of the building without those doors on. And obviously, you're saying that doesn't work for you. So I think the discussion really is where are we comfortable putting these doors? Both in a manner that works for you and in a manner that provides that buffer and that visual look that we were looking for from a design perspective.
But that can be done, that can be dealt with in other ways. You're just saying where the doors have to be. You've got landscaping, walls, fences, the way the site is laid out that can deal with that without having an arbitrary, it's got to be on the back.
It's visibility from the street, not street face per se, correct, Dan?
Yeah,
The issue is visibility from the street.
it's from outside the district, which is on two sides is the street.
But what if the whole parcel were developed? Then the doors would be facing the front of whatever was also developed within the whole parcel.
I don't follow you.
It's not just from the street, it's from the street now, but if this property were to be developed and other buildings would be added, then are we considering future buildings with where these doors are facing? Town board.
Well, your way to put it, if doors that will admit cars could be seen from Route 9 or Middle Road, but for screening, then we want the screening.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes. I mean, currently now the building there is what, 800 feet back or?
Yes. It's 750 to 800.
Yeah, but you could build a building 200 feet from the road. And in that case, we would want the doors to be screened.
Well, there would be a 200-foot buffer, natural buffer between that building if you were to put it on a 200-foot line and any road.
I think it's just what Chauncey said. Chauncey, can you say it again?
Yeah, if the doors could be seen from Route 9 or Middle Road, but for screening, then we need the screening.
Right.
The topography or something else means they wouldn't be visible from those roads, then we don't need the screening.
Yeah. I mean, this is unusual. It's not like they're proposing a site right on Route 9 or Route 9G. It's it's a large it's a parcel with a lot of internal space. So I would prefer to have the planning board have the flexibility to require screening as appropriate.
I think, I'm going to poll the town board here. We're comfortable with the doors being in the front or the back. We don't want to restrict that, but we do want to ensure that the planning board can require screening as needed.
Yeah.
And,
I'm good.
yeah, Josh is nodding.
That would include doors on the side.
Doors anywhere, but
Doors anywhere. We don't care.
doors anywhere, but planning board has the power to require screening.
Right.
I heard the language I think the language there, it makes the intent clear. It says,
Dan, we're talking about rewriting this, so this is what I've just pulled the board. So we would rewrite that language, correct?
Correct.
So, yeah. Is that acceptable? Doors anywhere, give the planning board authority to require screening?
But only if they would be visible from those two roads.
Yes.
Scott, Robert, Dan, is that acceptable?
So the way Chauncey states it, the screening being if they're visible from those two roads and having the ability to put doors on any side of the building, I think that is consistent with what Dan intended. Whether he wrote it that way to make it that simple, I don't know, but I accept what Chauncey's saying, that if it's visible from Route 9 or Middle Road, then the doors need to be screened with some sort of whatever the screening is.
Okay. I think we're in agreement there.
Thanks.
Okay.
Shared parking, do we need to discuss that or no?
I don't see that as a big issue.
Okay, so does that resolve everything?
Well, I think the next step is for Jim to come up with some language, and we'll look at it and then share that with the applicant, with the petitioners, and then see where we go from there.
Okay. We can schedule another workshop if we want to do the same
Oh.
thing.
Jim, how much time do you think you'll need to come back with something?
I can have something for the board, next week.
Oh, great. Okay.
Just a couple days. I just need a couple days, I think.
All right.
I'm away all next week, just so everybody knows.
We can't wait.
We already scheduled a party in town hall for.
That's
for Monday.
right. That's right.
Thanks.
We'll all take a week off.
Ding dong, which is good.
Oh, and I'll be in charge, so watch it.
Uh-oh.
I guess this internal discussion is not appropriate for us outsiders.
No, it's not. You're not in the club.
All one big family, Robert.
All right.
Are we all done here? Is everybody okay?
I
Here,
think
so.
so.
Okay.
Any other input from the petitioner?
Appreciate your time and,
We've addressed 3 points. We've addressed the buffer, we've addressed the doors, and we addressed the issue about product and whether that was defined to intend, to meet the cars. So I think we're anxious to see what Jim comes back with. And like you said, you'd be presented to the board and then it would be distributed to us, presuming that the board is in agreement with Jim. I would look very much forward to seeing that.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for your cooperation. Keep well, everybody.
Yeah,
Be safe.
Yeah,
thank
bye.
you very much.
Town board, is there anything else for us to discuss? Any new business? Any?
Yeah, I sent you all a draft of a resolution to authorize some activities, the activity bags and the scavenger hunt and so on.
Here's the question I had. You said, hold on. You said the former camp director at the former salary. Is that Elaine?
No. Camp director. It's Catherine.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Why do you say former? She's still our camp director.
Okay, then let's cross that out then. And yeah, I didn't know. I mean, it's.
You didn't know what? Okay.
I didn't know what to call her.
I got confused too because Elaine's rec, not camp.
Yeah, and so we're talking those hours.
For this motion?
Pardon me?
I need a second for this motion. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion from anyone?
I think we have to do something for kids.
Yeah, this will get it started. And we're talking about money that we have that we're not going to spend because
No,
even
we've
though
budgeted it. We've had money for camp.
yeah,
While Warren's on here, Warren, if we're spending money that we're not getting back, if we're funding something, does it only have to be for town residents or can we open it up?
I'm sorry. Run that back. I'm having trouble without my earphones here.
Yeah, I know. We got to send Fred over there to help.
Yeah, we need Fred.
Fred, are you here? You hear me? Maybe
Fred, if you're here, contact me. Maybe you can help me with these earphones.
Fred, I'll talk to you after this and give you Warren's number. He needs help. We have to have him being able to speak and hear. Usually for camp, we have two different rates, one for residents and one for non-residents. If this is a recreation program that we're funding and not charging money for, can we let in non-residents?
Let me check on that. So
I don't mean to be picky, but I just, we're not.
Yeah, where are we getting the funding from?
We're funding it.
We're funding it.
Probably a contingency line, or we'll do a budget transfer from recreation to these specific programs.
So you want to allow non-residents in, but are you going to charge them the same rate as the resident?
We're not charging anybody. So
Nobody.
No.
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
We're allowed to give away services to non-residents.
Well,
You see what? Yeah.
I better check into that. When you put it that way, that's a different question.
Jeez.
It all depends on how you ask the question.
Well, there's the rub, and
There's
that's
the
how I
rub.
see it, that we're funding.
Yeah, let
the
me
taxpayers are
let me chew
funding
on that. I'll get back
Does it
to you
get
on that.
extended to non-taxpayers?
Right.
Well, that's, I mean, we let people use our traffic lights for free, so.
But that's not
I think we can, but
that's not a specific,
That's for our protection.
Okay, and I have one other thing that'll take 30 seconds or less. I sent you all an update to the court consolidation fact sheet.
yeah, I want to talk to you one-on-one. You've totally missed the mark, to be blunt. I think.
Oh, okay.
That woman needs a vacation.
Well, I may do, but there's a certain point of view to this that I want to express to you.
All right, good. I'm
To
willing.
me, court consolidation is all about improving services and public access and security.
Okay, good.
That's why we're doing it.
All right, I will, I
Right
can,
now, the public's very limited. Town court is only open, 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week. It's a constant barrage on our clerks. We'll have 40 hours of town court clerk services available full-time, and it will cost less money than what it's costing now.
yeah, well, that, all those points are in there. They're just not as emphasized as, I'll redo it with that kind of point of view.
The town hall also inherently more accessible on every level. So it's more equitable to have everything happening there, opposed to trying to get up to the second floor of the village.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's been a source of confusion and people wind up not knowing where to go, so they miss court dates and blah, blah, blah. So
The reason why we're consolidating courts is because the state is propelling us to consolidate. Consolidation is good when it works, and this works. It saves money and it expands services.
Yes.
So Elizabeth, if we get complaints, we can honestly say we're under pressure from the state to do this kind of thing?
I think that's a stretch, but the state and the county has shared service consolidation, shared service grants. It's effective. I don't think we're getting pressure, but certainly to keep the tax cap, this is what we have to do. We have to consolidate and share. We're the smallest tax revenue, and we're getting beat up the most. Schools.
Would it be fair to say we're doing this at the urging of the state?
We're doing this because it's the right thing to do and it works. It saves taxpayer dollars and it expands.
At the urging of the 21st century.
Okay, good. I know.
The state is definitely encouraging consolidation of services.
Yeah, I was gonna make a PowerPoint slide with a picture of the two halls, Village Hall and Town Hall, as in the background to show, basically how redundant everything is.
Well, here's the front page of the consolidation study.
Oh yeah, but that's just
right across the street from each other.
Is that both halls?
That's both halls.
All right, I like that picture.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, the prisoners will only be brought up once a month, but it saves on everything.
Yeah, it'll actually go from 4 to 2 prisoner appearances.
Yeah.
I spent some time with Kathy. She's also going to figure out the hourly rate for the judges, given how many hours they've been serving and how much they're going to be serving.
Well, it's close to $150 an hour.
I know.
I would like to raise then.
Yes, I would. How do I get to be a judge?
Well, we'll work on this internally. The consolidation study will be released as soon as we're happy with the numbers in there. I still have to adjust a couple more, and I think we're talking to them. Gary and I are talking with LaBerge later this week.
Okay. Very good. Did we vote on my resolution?
I think Warren has to get back to.
I don't think you did.
Okay.
You changed the subject before we closed out one session. That's okay. Do you want to vote on it pending Warren's approval, or?
Please. That way we won't get it going.
Okay, that's fine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Anything else?
All right.
That's it. And I'll wait to hear from you, Warren, on the
All right.
Warren, thanks for your help with this. I think it went pretty well.
Not a problem. Speak to you later.
All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.
Yeah.
Alan, I'll call you.
All right, good. I'll be here.
Okay, so long, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Call me on my cell. I might not be exactly home. So,
Okay.
all right, bye.